About 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day, Katie Greifeld and Bailey Lipschultz. He's in for Romaine Bostick, and here to help take us through the closing bell, it's Global Simulcast. We're joined now by Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec, bringing together all of our various audiences across the different platforms. And Carol, we're off session highs, but once again, this looks like a market that is really eager to sort of shake off the last month and go higher, even though we're hearing different things when it comes to what the U.S. is saying and what Iranian state media is saying.
Yeah, we just saw President Trump apparently telling ABC that the U.S. is talking with the Speaker of the Iranian parliament. The back and forth continues, Katie, and we continue to see markets trade that way. Having said that, we're definitely off our best levels of the session, and I think at this point, I think we're all kind of eager to see what President Trump has to say in that evening address tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there, Carol. I know I'm going to be watching that. We're going to have it here on Bloomberg, of course. Bailey, I'm also watching oil and the convergence of WTI and Brent. Prices that have, over the last few weeks, sort of been far apart from one another, now converging. WTI just shy of $100 a barrel, Brent at about $101 a barrel. Both of those down just by about 2%.
But, Tim, we're still talking about an oil market that, for the most part, is driving the markets. And, again, $100 a barrel oil would have been inconceivable a month ago. But here we are, and we're talking about how potentially breaking below that is positive.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see it not really weighing down the equity market at this moment. But to Bailey's point, $100 a barrel, I mean, these are pretty high absolute levels relative to recent history. If we stay there, how high can the equity market remain? That's a question that we're going to be asking. But the S&P 500, at least on this Wednesday, this April 1st, going to finish about 0.7% higher on the S&P 500. We did break above 6,600 earlier in the session. We've taken back some of those gains. You take a look at the NASDAQ, that's going to finish higher by about 1.2%. The Dow, it's lagging here, higher by about 0.5%. Do with that what you will. The small caps also getting in on the action, but a similar trajectory to the S&P 500, Carol. Started out, saw big session highs, and then faded a little bit heading into the close.
All right, back to the S&P 500 I go. More names, I should say, in the S&P 500 actually higher for this Wednesday session. About 301 to the upside, Bailey, 201 losing ground, and then you've got 2 unchanged.
Yeah, and a lot of the weakness when we look on the sector level, energy and consumer staples. Energy down almost 4% on the day. Big outperformers for the session were communication services, industrials, and materials, all up more than 1%, as was infotech.
All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers, if I may, in today's session. So let's look at some of the stocks that actually were momentum performers as of late. And so take a look. You've got Western Digital, a high flyer last year, up another 10%. You also had Seagate Technology. That was up 8% in today's session. You have Micron up almost 9%. That was another one that gained almost 240% last year. And so just looking through some of the right-through, especially when it comes to something like Western Digital and a few others. I did see a note by Evercore ISI. Actually, it was, I think, Investors Business Daily pointing this out. We believe AI-driven data demand remains fundamentally robust, providing a durable tailwind for the HDD market. Again, this is Evercore ISI writing in a note today. Crucially, the transition from AI training to inference could create a structural opening for HDDs. So nonetheless, I don't know. Momentum players getting some love on this Wednesday. Also getting love, Intel. This too was top in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, a gain of just shy of 9%. The chipmaker agreed to pay $14.2 billion to buy back half of a plant in Ireland. D.A. Davidson writing that the move bodes well for the company's turnaround story. Transaction financed with cash on hand and the issuance of about $6.5 billion in new debt. It is expected to add to the chipmaker's earnings per share and kind of reflects Intel's growing confidence in its business and its belief that its products can play a bigger role in the boom in spending on AI infrastructure. You probably don't do a deal like that unless you have some confidence about your outlook. And then here's an interesting AI data center play, kind of unexpected. TH is the ticker. The company's Target Hospitality up about 36% there, soaring as much as 43% intraday. It's a $1.2 billion market cap provider of workforce, lodging, and hospitality services, and they secured a multi-year contract worth over $550 million to construct and provide comprehensive facility and hospitality services for a top 5 hyperscalers data center development in North Texas. So I guess they're going to be providing food, and lodging.
You got to feed the data centers.
Well, this goes
So
to,
true.
we've talked to workplace or housing people, right, who are doing workplace housing where like all this stuff is going on because workers need places to live. Anyway, there you go. Big mover.
You had a lot of gainers to choose from. I had some decliners that stayed in the red all day today, which is great. I do want to start with shares of Nike falling today by more than 15%. Late yesterday, the company gave this gloomy outlook for the year ahead. Revenue expected to decline 2 to 4% in the current quarter. Headwinds include all the stuff that we've talked about for years at this point. Elevated inventories in Europe and the Middle East, weakness in Greater China. Nike CEO Elliott Hill said the direction is clear and the foundation is getting stronger, but acknowledged that parts of the turnaround are taking longer than expected. We got a great story on the Bloomberg. Lily Meyer writing it up about getting a recording of a call that Elliott Hill had with staff yesterday and really trying to rally the troops, given that shares of this company are at lows not seen in more than a decade at this point. So trying to get some excitement and trying to get them to win, and also expressing his own frustration.
Yeah, that was a great piece of reporting. I mean, you have to imagine that, if you're constantly in a state of turnaround and it doesn't seem like it's getting traction, especially when you take a look at the share price, that has to be pretty killer for morale of the employees at that company.
Well, I also, Tim, what shoes were you wearing in October 2014, the last time the stock was this low?
I don't even remember.
Gosh.
It's not good.
What was I?
That's probably
I don't
the
even
New
know. Like
Balances.
what were they?
Adidas?
I don't even know, Bailey. What were the Nikes in 2014?
I'm trying to
Allbirds?
think. I was probably in college. I was in college.
You were
Katie,
in college.
Katie was also in college. So
Yes.
that was probably. I wore Sperry's
All right.
and Vans.
That's
Those are
enough
the two things
out of
I
you
wore.
two. All right, we're going to keep going here. What else do we got on the decliners menu today? How about a little more retail? Let's talk about RH, the company formerly known as Restoration Hardware. Shares fell today by more than 19%. They were down as much as 23%. They closed at their lowest levels going back to April of 2020. Remember what happened then was we were in the demand shock of the COVID pandemic. We were in the depths of that. The company forecast revenue for the first quarter that missed the average analyst estimate. Analysts out and said that the forecast was pressured by execution, supply chain disruptions also. An interesting note from an analyst over at Citi said the company lags peers in the home furnishings industry, and it also reflects a weaker European consumer demand environment. It'll be interesting to hear from more companies as we do get into the next quarter. Like, I don't know, the banks in a couple of weeks about what the demand environment is looking like in the United States. And finally, how about some French fries or potatoes that go to French fries? This is Lamb Weston Holdings. They make frozen French fries from potatoes. Biggest customer?
McDonald's, right? I had McDonald's for lunch today.
There we go.
I tried that art.
Bailey is right.
Dude, it was electric.
Biggest customer is McDonald's.
Nice.
Shares fell to the lowest level going back to 2017. The company's full year forecast implied weaker than expected fourth quarter performance. They don't have your. Did you get fries with that, Bailey?
I did. I got a medium fry. It was like $5 though, but I will say I tried the Arch. It's a $10 burger.
Yeah.
Worth every penny. It was kind
Oh,
of.
is that the one that the CEO ate?
I was just going to say
I
you should do an
think
Instagram
so.
video about it, Bailey.
Next time.
Maybe.
Next time I'll do it, Tim. I'll get you one too.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Tim, I don't know if you would eat an arch. That it doesn't seem like you. I had Chick-fil-A for the third day in a row. No one asked, but I'll tell you. Anyway, let's talk about the bond market and what happened there. It was pretty quiet. Once again, you're seeing fireworks to the upside when it comes to the equity market. Can't say the same for the bond market. It's been kind of nonplussed over the past 2 days, but nevertheless, the 2-year Treasury yield, which Bailey highlighted earlier, rising by about 1 basis point here. But then you take a look at the rest of the curve, and there you go. The 20-year yield now unchanged as well, in addition to the 30-year yield. And I think you can go ahead and call the 10-year Treasury yield unchanged as well, though we are looking at fairly high absolute levels.
Yeah.
2/4 pound, 4 ounce, 100% beef patties. That's
Yum.
the Arch. That's a lot of beef.
It's over 1,000 calories, so I kind of felt a little bloated, but I walked
okay?
around.
They say it's protein heavy.
There's nothing like
one way to-
eating
one way to say
1,000
it.
calories and then going on air.
Oh, we can't talk about 12 Okay, I guess we can't talk about 12 metric tons of stolen Kit Kat bars.
Speaking of
Maybe we save it for tomorrow ahead of
a big meal.
the holiday weekend.
A lot of Kit Kats going to be eaten over Easter weekend.
And then some.